There's a quiet but persistent question that lingers in the minds of many people living with OCD. Do I really need to treat this? It's not always said out loud, and it's rarely asked in public. But it often shows up in private moments, during sleepless nights, after yet another hour lost to compulsions, or when intrusive thoughts once again hijack the day. This question isn't born from ignorance. In fact, it often arises from awareness, an awareness that something feels off, but maybe not bad enough. Some people minimize their pain, thinking it's just part of their personality. Others worry that seeking help means admitting weakness or fear they'll lose control if they stop doing their rituals. And many people, especially those who have been silently struggling for years, wonder if healing is even possible or if this is just how life will always be. But here's the truth. OCD isn't just a quirk or a personality trait. It's a complex and often debilitating mental health condition. And yet, because it wears so many disguises, it often gets dismissed or misunderstood, even by those who live with it. So today, we're unpacking the heart of that quiet question. Does OCD always need treatment? And what does treatment actually mean when we look at the bigger picture of healing, dignity, and living a life with intention? Obsessive-compulsive disorder is a condition with many faces. For some, it involves visible compulsions, hand-washing, checking locks, redoing tasks, or counting steps. But for many others, the battle is entirely internal. These individuals may spend hours spiraling through mental rituals, like mentally reviewing past conversations to ensure they didn't offend someone, repeating silent mantras to neutralize intrusive thoughts, or analyzing whether they're a bad person because of a fleeting, unwanted image. This type of OCD, often referred to as puro, short for purely obsessional, can be just as distressing, even though it's invisible to the outside world. OCD often attaches itself to what a person values most deeply. For someone with strong moral beliefs, OCD may generate intrusive thoughts about being immoral or sinful. For someone in a loving relationship, OCD may fixate on doubts about whether they truly love their partner. This ability to mimic our values and twist them into sources of fear is what makes OCD so tormenting. It creates mental traps and demands certainty in a world where certainty doesn't exist. And because its symptoms vary so widely, from contamination fears to existential dread, many people suffer for years before they even realize they have OCD. Instead, they might blame themselves, feel ashamed, or conclude they're simply broken. The danger of thinking, "I'm not sick enough." One of the biggest obstacles to seeking treatment for OCD is the belief that you're not suffering badly enough to deserve help. We live in a culture that often glorifies visible pain and crisis while minimizing silent suffering. If someone isn't having panic attacks every day or missing work, it's easy for them, and others, to assume they're fine. But functioning on the outside doesn't mean peace on the inside. Many people with OCD are high achievers. They show up to work, raise families, and maintain friendships while privately managing a relentless mental storm. And just because they've learned to mask their symptoms doesn't mean the toll isn't real. The truth is, OCD often trains you to hide it. It tells you that your fears are irrational, so you should keep them secret. It convinces you that if you just do the compulsion one more time, the anxiety will go away. But that relief is temporary, and the cycle only deepens. Over time, people begin to structure their lives around avoidance. They avoid certain places, conversations, thoughts, and decisions. Their world becomes smaller, so gradually that they don't always notice it shrinking. You don't need to be in crisis to deserve help. If OCD is stealing your time, your joy, or your sense of safety in your own mind, that alone is reason enough to seek support. When is treatment really necessary? The decision to pursue treatment is deeply personal. Some people can manage mild OCD symptoms without formal intervention, especially if they've developed healthy coping strategies. But it's important to distinguish between coping and healing. If you find yourself structuring your day around obsessions or compulsions, feeling exhausted by mental loops, or constantly avoiding triggers. These are signs that OCD is impairing your quality of life. Here's the key point. Treatment isn't just for the severely ill. It's for anyone who wants more freedom, more energy, more time, more connection, more peace. Even if your symptoms feel manageable, they might be quietly eroding your life. Maybe you've accepted the constant doubt as normal. Maybe you've grown so used to your rituals that you don't realize how much time they steal. Or maybe you've convinced yourself that this is just your personality. But OCD isn't who you are, it's something you have. And if it's limiting your potential or your joy, treatment isn't just appropriate. It's an act of reclaiming yourself. What happens if OCD goes untreated? Untreated OCD tends to worsen over time. The brain learns that compulsions temporarily relieve anxiety, so it reinforces those behaviors. That's why OCD is often described as a loop or a trap. Each time a compulsion is performed, it strengthens the belief that the obsession was dangerous and needed to be neutralized. Over the years, rituals can grow more elaborate, obsessions can become more frequent, and avoidance behaviors can become more limiting. Without treatment, many people with OCD experience theme shifts where their focus jumps from one fear to another. For example, someone who used to worry about contamination may later develop intrusive fears about harming others or about committing a sin. The content of the fear changes, but the cycle remains the same: obsession, anxiety, compulsion, temporary relief, repeat. This cycle can drain emotional energy, reduce productivity, damage relationships, and increase vulnerability to depression and burnout. In some cases, untreated OCD can contribute to suicidal thoughts, not because the person wants to die, but because they feel trapped and hopeless. It doesn't have to reach that point. Early intervention can significantly reduce the impact of OCD and offer people the tools they need to break free. What does treatment look like? And is it always the same? No, treatment isn't one size fits all. And that's a good thing. The gold standard therapy for OCD is exposure and response prevention, ERP, a form of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. Specifically designed to help people face their fears without engaging in compulsions. ERP teaches the brain that anxiety doesn't need to be fixed, that it can rise and fall without catastrophic outcomes. Over time, this builds tolerance to uncertainty and reduces OCD's grip. But treatment isn't limited to therapy. Some people benefit from medications like SSRIs, which can help lower the intensity of intrusive thoughts and make therapy more effective. Others find value in mindfulness practices, peer support groups, or even OCD-specific apps that provide structured exercises. The key is consistency, patience, and the willingness to sit with discomfort. Healing takes time, and it's rarely linear. There may be setbacks, plateaus, and moments of doubt. But there's also growth, courage, and reclaimed freedom. Importantly, treatment doesn't mean becoming someone else. It means becoming more of who you are without the interference of OCD. Healing from OCD doesn't mean your mind is completely free of unwanted thoughts. Intrusive thoughts happen to everyone. What makes OCD different is how a person responds to those thoughts. In recovery, you learn to let thoughts come and go without assigning them meaning or urgency. You stop feeding the cycle with rituals and instead learn to tolerate uncertainty, imperfection, and emotional discomfort. Healing is about learning that you don't have to obey every anxious impulse. It's about realizing you can have a disturbing thought and still be a good person. You can make a mistake and still be safe. You can feel unsure and still move forward. Healing doesn't make you perfect. It makes you whole again. It gives you back your time, your energy, and your voice. It reconnects you with your values, your relationships, and your life. So, does OCD always need to be treated? Not everyone will choose therapy or medication, and that's okay. But if OCD is interfering with your ability to live the life you want, if it's making decisions for you, stealing your joy, or creating fear where there should be peace, then yes, treatment can be transformative. You don't need to prove you're suffering. You don't need to wait until everything falls apart. If something inside you is saying, "This isn't the life I want," that is enough. You deserve more than survival. You deserve clarity, calm, laughter, and love. OCD is not your fault. But healing? Healing is something you can choose. And that choice can start today. Disclaimer: this content is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you are struggling with symptoms of OCD, please consult a licensed mental health provider. You are not alone, and help is available.